This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
The NFL schedule release for 2023 is tonight, and frankly, it's kind of dull. The fact they have like a full show and a full thing leading up to the release of the schedule is pretty annoying, but it does matter for us as bettors because we can decide when we want to bet futures markets and different teams based on when they play certain teams, based on if their schedule is front-loaded being tough, back-loaded, whatever it may be, and, rest, travel, all that stuff does matter. So it does matter for us as bettors. But I also think it's a good excuse to talk about strength of schedule. And I think that a lot of times when we discuss this, we discuss it in a very flawed manner. What we're going to do for today is use my power rankings to lay out which teams have the toughest schedules for this year, talk through what that means for their win totals, and hopefully try to give you a better metric for that than what you'll see typically when schedules are discussed for tonight. Welcome on in to Covering the Spread. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire, talking here about some NFL strength of schedule numbers based on what my numbers are showing. We'll talk through the three teams with the toughest schedules this year, the three with the easiest schedules, again, based on just my numbers, hopefully trying to dissect whether that makes sense, whether that's a flawed way to look at it, and much more to give you some insight into the schedules and hopefully a better way of looking at it than looking at opposing teams' record from the previous year. We'll also dig into some NASCAR and Darlington, talking through Cup Series, Xfinity Series, Truck Series, all at the same time, giving you where my numbers are showing value for this week over at FanDuel Sportsbook. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. Tomorrow, I will not be here. I'm going to have Tom Vecchio fill in for me on Friday and Monday. My wife's PhD hooding is coming up on Friday, so I'll be at that. So thank you to Tom for filling in for me while I'll be gone there. As a result, no video version of the show Friday and Monday over on the FanDuel YouTube page, but there will be an audio version on the Covering the Spread podcast feed. So make sure you're subscribed there. And if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating as well. And thank you in advance to Tom for filling in for me. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and you can get on the action right now over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, all customers, not just new customers, get a no-sweat same-game parlay every weekend of the NBA playoffs. That's right. Just place a 3+ leg same-game parlay or same-game parlay plus on any NBA playoff game. You'll get bonus bets back if you don't win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Head to the FanDuel app and get a no-sweat same-game parlay every weekend of the NBA playoffs. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. In Massachusetts, Hope is here. GamblingHelplineMA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Wyoming and Kansas, 1-800-522-4700 or in Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. Louisiana is 1-877-770-STOP. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. And in West Virginia, go to 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Now let's talk here about the NFL strength of schedule. And as mentioned, you're going to see a lot of tweets, I've already seen them, about strength of schedule and how tough a team's schedule is. And a lot of those, at least the ones released from NFL Communications for some reason, are based on the opposing team's record the previous year. They will caveat it saying that it's flawed, and it is. So I think the simple solution is if it's that flawed, just don't use it. But you will see it out there for sure. Others are smarter. I've seen this past couple years where they will use betting markets to tell you the strength of schedule. And that's awesome. That is a lot smarter way because markets are more efficient than last year's schedule. The Jets in 2023 are very different than the Jets in 2022. So using markets to decide that, much smarter. The one flaw there is that the win totals for teams facing the Chiefs are inherently lower because the Chiefs are on their schedule. That's going to, in a way, make the Chiefs' schedule look easier than it is. So it is a much better route than using last year's numbers. And I think I respect this route a lot for sure. But that is that one flaw is that it already kind of factors in. They're like, oh, they're facing these teams. So it makes the good teams look like they have easier schedules than they may actually have. So I wanted to run through what I've got in this regard. I have a power rating for each team that accounts for offseason moves and projects what I expect them to be like this upcoming year. I can take that power rating and then look at the win total for each team. That will give me an expected win total based on each team's power rating and based on their power rating alone. If a team has a much lower win total projected by my numbers than you'd expect based on their power rating, it implies their schedule is difficult. So a team is rated at X and they're projected to win Y games. If they're projected to win projected Y -1 games, that implies that their schedule is very tough, one win less than you'd expect based on their power rating. The reverse would be true as well. So this is also flawed because it assumes my model is correct, and that's obviously not the case. I would love for that to be the case, but it's flawed. But I do think that this is a good way of looking at things, and it's better than looking at last year's schedule. I do think the market angle is probably correct too, but this is a hopefully a unique way to look at it. Once buys are announced, I can add that in and stuff. But this is accounting for opponents faced, where they'll face them, and things like that. So for today, wanted to run through the teams, the toughest schedules. Those are the easiest, and outline what that means as far as what my numbers say. I'll run through the expected win total based on the team's power rating, the actual projected wins in my numbers, and their win total over at FanDuel Sportsbook. When I dig into my numbers, the team with the expected toughest schedule so far this year is the New England Patriots. Because right now, if you take just the power rating that my numbers have for the Patriots, their win total will be 7.8. But when you plug in their actual schedule, their projected win totals by my numbers is 6.9. It's almost a full win lower than you'd expect based on their team strength in my model. Their win total at FanDuel Sportsbook is 7.5. The under is even money. I think there is value on the under here as a result of this. And the reason the Patriots schedule is so tough is because the AFC East itself is very tough. You got the Bills there. I think the Jets, as much as we can joke about them, will be significantly better with Aaron Rodgers in town versus Zach Wilson. Rodgers played through a thumb injury all of last year, comes over here. I think the offensive line, they've got a lot of depth at tackle despite not being very strong there. And then you have Garrett Wilson and competent pass catchers beyond him as well. So the Jets are tough. Dolphins, if Tua is healthy, are tough, but also even if Tua does miss time, that defense should be good with Vic Fangio in town as well. Outside of the AFC East, the Patriots also facing the AFC West. So facing the Chiefs, facing the Chargers, teams like that. My numbers don't hate the Raiders or the Broncos as well. So that's a tough road. And the NFC East. So you get the Eagles, you get the Cowboys, Giants and Commanders, not as big of a tough of a task, but it's a really difficult schedule here for New England. I do not have the Patriots favored in any of their road games as of right now. So I think they'll be better this year. I like what they did in the draft, taking 3 offensive linemen pretty late to try to give themselves swipes at high upside positions. And I like that a lot. I think that approach is good. Bringing in Bill O'Brien should help them a lot too, but it's a very tough schedule. It's tough to be super jazzed about this passing offense in terms of efficiency. So I think when you look at the schedule for the Patriots, the under 7.5 and even money does make a lot of sense. That's what I'd be willing to make based largely on the schedule they'll face this year. The number 2 toughest schedule across the NFL for this season, based on my numbers, is the Washington Commanders. If you look at their power rating, they'd be expected to win 7.3 games. I have them projected for 6.8. Now, this one is actually in line with what the market has, because the market has the Commanders win total at 6.5 with the over at -122. So if I've got 6.8 wins, almost exactly in line with the market there at 6.5 over at -122. Big thing here is obviously the NFC East. That is a tough path for them. They're facing the AFC East too. So similar pathway here as the Patriots. Now, the Commanders, the difference for them is they do get some pretty good matchups at home. They'll face the Bears at home. They'll face the Cardinals, who may or may not be tanking. And that's part of why, even with a tough schedule, I have them projected a hair above their actual win total for this year. But it is a tough road. Part of this, too, is I've got them projected decently high because of their defense, but also I don't think Sam Howell's in like the worst position to succeed. I did like Howell coming out of the draft. It's hard to have high expectations for a guy who was a 5th-round pick, but had good collegiate efficiency numbers outside of being sacked a lot. He's young. He was decently efficient, pretty experienced coming out, checks a lot of boxes in that regard. So I don't mind the Commanders this year, but that schedule, very, very tough. And it keeps me away from taking the over 6.5 at -122, despite the fact, based on their actual strength, their win total for me should be 7.3. So they could bump down half a win based on the schedule they'll face. The third toughest schedule for this year, it's just a vendetta against all Patriots associated teams, it seems like, because the Las Vegas Raiders have the third toughest schedule. And I think that might be why their win total came down. It was 7.5. It was, I think, plus money on the over. It's now 6.5 with -144 on the over. And similar to Washington, I think this is in line. The market is correct on this one because I've got the Raiders' expected wins based on their power rating at 7.6. Their projected wins are 7.1, so down a half win based on their schedule. And the win total is 6.5 with -144 on the over. I think with the schedule they're facing, that's enough to push me away from taking over 6.5, despite the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo's fine. They've got Devontae Adams, got some decent infrastructure. I still think that we can stay away from the over here as a result of the schedule. They're facing the AFC West, obviously, given they are in the AFC West, and they're facing the AFC East too. So they get the Bills, Jets, Dolphins, Patriots. Their NFC matchup is the North, so that's not bad because the only team I'm super high on there is the Lions, and the Vikings are fine, Packers fine, Bears below average. So the NFC portion is not that bad. But when you're facing the Chiefs twice, facing the Chargers twice, I don't mind the Broncos all that much. It's a pretty tough road. So I do have them projected above their win total, but once you account for the juice at -144, they become a stay away because the schedule for the Raiders is very tough. So the three toughest schedules, by my numbers, are the Patriots, Commanders, and Raiders. And I think that there is some value in taking the under on the Patriots at 7.5 wins. That is even money right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. Other tough schedules for this year, by my numbers, are the Cardinals. They're 4th. The NFC West is not great, but it's still a tough schedule, followed by the Giants, the Chargers, and the Broncos. So those are the top 7 as far as toughest schedules for this year. On the flip side, the easiest schedule for 2023, based on just my numbers, I don't think this will be a shock to anybody given the division they play in, but it belongs to the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints, if you just take, Derek Carr in this offense with a pretty good defense, I'd have them projected for 8.7 wins. That's not bad. That's an okay number for sure. But when you add in their schedule, I have them projected for 10 wins. So they get a bump of 1.3 wins based on the schedule they will face alone. That is a huge bump. Their win total at FanDuel Sportsbook is 9.5 with the over at +106. So even though that number is high, when you look at it, it is kind of like startling how high that number is for the Saints. I do still think there is some appeal in potentially taking the over there because of the route they will face. The Saints this year are facing the NFC South, so facing a rookie quarterback in the Panthers, either Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask, and they get the Falcons. So my numbers are not super enthusiastic about, as we'll discuss here in a second. They also face the NFC North. So, as mentioned, not a super tough division as Rodgers. And this is the key part here for the NFC South. So they face the AFC South. I think that the Colts could be fun this year. I don't think the Colts will be good, though. They're going to be fun to watch. Doesn't mean I think they'll be great. Get the Texans, rookie quarterback there as well. The Titans are a very odd team. And then you get the Jags. I like the Jags plenty, but the AFC South is a good draw for sure. So the Saints, again, if you go just based on their power rating, projected for 8.7 wins, but I've got them at 10 as a result of the schedule they will face. Massive, massive boost. So despite the fact I think the Saints are about an average team based on my numbers, I do still think there is appeal in over 9.5 wins at +106 right now over at FanDuel Sportsbook. It might feel stupid, it might feel gross, but there is potentially some value there as of right now. The second easiest schedule is also in the NFC South. However, this one I'm not going to be taking the over on their win total, despite the fact their schedule is very, very easy. That team is the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, their win total at FanDuel Sportsbook is 8.5, with the under at -110. If you just take the Falcons' power rating in my model and plug it out there, their expected win total would be 6.6, 2 wins below their total. When you add in their schedule, it bumps up to 7.3. So they gain 0.7 wins based on the schedule they will face, which is a good number, but it's still 1.2 wins below their total. So even with an easy schedule, I think that there is value in the under here on the Falcons. So they get the same route as the Saints get, where they're facing the NFC South, the NFC North, and the AFC South. They do have a lot of winnable games at home. They've got Green Bay at home, Houston, Indy, and Washington, but the road schedule is very, very tough. So the Falcons have the second easiest schedule in the league. I still think there is value in the under on 8.5 wins at -110. Desmond Ridder played decent last year. I thought that he was pretty fun coming out of Cincinnati. So it's not really a Ridder thing. The defense has a long way to go. They've made a ton of swipes to that defense, especially late in the draft. They took a lot of swipes there, a lot of ads in free agency, but they had a long way to go. So I'm still a bit pessimistic here. I understand why this win total is high, and I'm not like jumping to take the under, but I do think there is value in the under at 8.5 wins at -110, despite the fact the Falcons have the second easiest schedule by my numbers this year. The third easiest schedule, going back to the NFC North, and it's a team that is going to be playing an opening day in the NFL against the Kansas City Chiefs. That is the Detroit Lions. Their win total 9.5, over is -122. I've got that about right based on their strength, because the Lions' strength has them as a 9.8 win team based on my power rating. But once you plug in their schedule, their win total for me is 10.4. So almost a full win over the total at 9.5. So I think there is value in the over here for the Lions at -122 over 9.5. If you look at the home games for Detroit, those are largely super winnable. Obviously, all the NFC North teams at home, but also they get Atlanta at home, Carolina, and Las Vegas. The schedule is pretty easy here, despite facing the AFC West. Again, they get the Chiefs on opening day. They also have to face the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Broncos. But they also do get the NFC South. So they benefit from the NFC South being very, very poor. They benefit from facing a lot of very soft teams at home, which jacks up their expected win total or their expected win odds in those games quite a bit and gives them some pretty steady baselines for wins. I do tend to like Jared Goff, so maybe this is me just being too high on him, but this is even with their win total or their projected passing efficiency being lower for 2023 than it was in 2022. This will change. Their win total will change based on the schedule being released tonight, because we'll know when Jameson Williams is suspended. I have it just kind of baked in as if he's playing 11 out of 17 games right now. But if they have a super tough first 6 games before Williams is back, then that will lower their win total. Or if their easier games are coming in the first 6, that may actually increase their win total from where it is. So this number will change. I'd be okay waiting to take the over 9.5 right now, because again, I got them at 10.4, over 9.5 -122. Not a ton of wiggle room there. So I'd wait until the Lions schedule is released, but assuming they don't get just totally skewered in their schedule release with a lot of tough teams early on, I think there could be some value in the Lions over 9.5 wins at -122. So situations I'm monitoring, I do like the Lions over 9.5 wins. I do like the Falcons under 8.5, despite an easy schedule. Don't mind the Saints over 9.5 at +106. As far as the tougher schedules, do like the Patriots under 7.5 at even money as of right now. Other easy schedules, I would note, the Panthers, of course, in the NFC South, the Colts in the AFC South, and the Jags in the AFC South, and the 49ers in the NFC West, given the weakness of the Rams and the Cardinals. Not a huge shock to see the 49ers there. So, again, easiest schedules this year: Saints, Falcons, Lions, Panthers, Colts, Jags, and 49ers. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. Hopefully it's not too self-flattering to use my power ratings to judge strength of schedule. But again, I think there are flaws other ways. There are flaws every way in measuring strength of schedule. So hopefully this has been a useful exercise for you in trying to project out scheduling strength. Let's shift gears now and talk about some NASCAR because we got a lot of NASCAR coming up this week. It is in Darlington throwback weekend for the NASCAR Cup Series where they're running a lot of old school paint schemes. Always a fun time. We have 3 races coming up with the Trucks, Xfinity, and the Cup Series all running in Darlington for this weekend. As far as the Cup Series goes, I'm not seeing a ton of value as of right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. I have Kyle Larson at 15% to win this race. His implied odds at 5-1 are 16.7%. So if you are able to get access to Larson at 6-1 or longer, I'd fire away. That's a pretty good bet. But at 5-1, I can't quite get there. I do think there is a route to betting on Kyle Larson this weekend, which we'll talk about later on, but I can't quite get there on the outright market at FanDuel Sportsbook for this week. I am very close to showing value in Ross Chastain at 11-1. I have him at 7.5% to win, so 1,300 or longer would probably be a good number there, a 13-1 or longer. William Byron is 10-1 some places, plus 850 at FanDuel Sportsbook. I'd have fair value in him as plus 1120. His odds to me 8.2%. So I'm watching Larson to see if I can get a 6. I'm watching Chastain to see if I can get 13-1 or longer. Then watching Byron to see if I can get 12-1 or longer on him. FanDuel does not have top 10 odds up yet for the NASCAR Cup Series. Let me just check here one last time to see if those have been posted here in the past couple of minutes. Oh, they have. Okay. How about that? So FanDuel has posted top 10 odds. I'm going to run through these right now and see if there is any value. And there is a little bit. Okay. So the guy I'm focusing on right now, as far as being a value to finish top 10, is Corey LaJoie. He is 11-1 to finish top 10 at FanDuel Sportsbook. You can actually get 15-1 elsewhere, and I show value even at 11-1. So I think LaJoie is a good bet. I have Corey LaJoie in the top 10 at 12% of the time. That seems like a grotesque number. His implied odds at 11-1 are lower than that. They'd be under 10%, 11-1, 8.3%. So implied odds, 8.3%. I have LaJoie at 12% to finish top 10. The reason he is there is because his form has been much better this year. Ran pretty well in Fontana, another high tire wear track with a lot of speed. So that was encouraging because Spire's big issue is speed, but LaJoie actually did hang pretty well in that one. We went to Las Vegas. LaJoie is also competent there, had good speed in Dover, was solid last week in Kansas. And Darlington's a track where he's actually been good in the past. He had a run here back in 2021, I believe, where he ran top 15 pretty much the entire night. Didn't finish top 10, but he was good. So we've seen LaJoie pop at this track before. His current form is the best it has ever been by a wide margin. I think 11-1 is a really good number. So if you can get 15-1, go take that. It's a great number. But even at 11-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook, I do still think Corey LaJoie is a value for this race. I also would add, I want to give like the biggest of caveats here. Please don't dump a lot of money on this because I have value in Corey LaJoie to win elsewhere. He's 1,000-1 to win. The implied odds of that are 0.1%. I have him at 0.36 to win. So it's a bet that loses 99.6% of the time. I want to be very clear about that. But I did bet it myself. I took the 1,000-1 on LaJoie to win. It's not going to happen. It happens 1 out of every 100 and something times, but worth a shot. 1 out of every 200 times actually. But I think it was worth a shot for me. So I did take LaJoie 1,000-1 to win. It's a stupid bet. I'm not saying you should follow it, but I did show value there. So Corey LaJoie 11-1, the more sound bet over at FanDuel Sportsbook for this week. I mentioned before that you can bet Kyle Larson this weekend without taking the 5-1 in the Cup Series. That's because he is also running in the Xfinity Series, and I do show value on him at 2-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook. You can get plus 225, I believe, out there still. But I have Larson at 37.4% to win. So a value at both these numbers, 2-1 or 225. Larson is driving for Colleague Racing in this event. That's not the same equipment as a junior motorsports car. So it's not the best equipment, but it's fine equipment that can win at this track with a good enough driver. And Kyle Larson, very good at Darlington. He's a little bit erratic. He can be kind of maybe get out over his skis a little bit at times, but I think that he is a very talented race car driver. You put him up against this kind of field. I do respect a lot of the drivers in this field in Xfinity, but I think Kyle Larson is still the best. So He has not won Darlington in the Cup Series before. I think he could get a win on Saturday in Xfinity. I would not be shocked if he did it on Sunday in the Cup Series as well. 2-1 for Darlington. For Larson at Darlington is a fine number on the Xfinity side of things. Even with Larson sucking up 37% of the win equity in my model, I also have Austin Hill as a value. He is 28-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook. I got him at 35 elsewhere earlier this week. So shop around on Austin Hill, see what number you can get. But even at 28-1 would be a slight value for me at FanDuel Sportsbook. I have him at 4.2% to win. His implied odds at 28-1 are 3.4%. Implied odds at 35-1, I think, are 2.8%. But either way, good value on Austin Hill here. He won Las Vegas. It's not the best track comp for Darlington, but he is a higher speed track, does have at least some tire fall off. Hill, not the best track record in Darlington specifically, either in Xfinity or in the Truck Series, but this number is very, very long. So I would be okay taking that. I do think it's okay to shop around on Hill for a top 5 as well. He is plus 375 there at other books, so I don't mind that, but 28-1 to win, also okay for Austin Hill. Other top 5 bets I like elsewhere, Chandler Smith is plus 275. I think with what he's done in Richmond, another track with a lot of tire fall off, not a great comp for Darlington, but it's also, again, the heavy tire fall off thing does matter. So he destroys that track. Plus 275 for a top 5 to me makes a lot of sense. Brandon Jones is plus 375. My numbers tend to be a bit too high in him, but it's a JRM car. He has experience at Darlington, so plus 375 for a top 5 makes sense. And then finally, Daniel Hemrick at plus 750. So every single Collin car showing value in some market for me, with Larson to win at 2-1, Smith plus 275 top 5, and then Hemrick plus 750. I just think it's a long number. So top 5 bets I like for Xfinity, Austin Hill 375, Chandler Smith 275, Brandon Jones 375, and Daniel Hemrick at plus 750. FanDuel does not have truck odds up yet. I guess they posted top 10, so maybe I can see. Nope, no truck odds up yet for FanDuel in Darlington, but you can look elsewhere, and I also show some value in a favorite elsewhere for the Truck Series, and that's in William Byron. You can get plus 250. The implied odds there are 29%. I have Byron at 33.6% to win. Byron is in a Kyle Busch Motorsports truck, which means he will have absurd speed this weekend. When you put Kyle Busch in that truck, he can get win odds north of 50%. But Byron there, 33% by my model, seems pretty reasonable. So Byron at plus 250, I'm very on board with that. I think that it is weird to bet 2 super short numbers at a track that does have some chaos like Darlington, but given how good William Byron is, how good that equipment is, plus 250, I'm very on board with that, and very on board with Larson at 2-1 in the Xfinity Series. I do also show value on Stuart Friesen at 40-1 and Parker Kligerman at 50-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook, or at other books for this race. Friesen's top 5 mark is plus 450. Kligerman is 5-1. Those are both also values for me. So I don't mind taking swipes at the outrights of 40 and 50-1 respectively on Friesen and Kligerman, but I think the top 5 bets are the better route, given that we got Byron in this field, Chastain's in this field, Bubba Wallace is in this field in a very good truck. You got Corey LaJoie here too. I'm not sure really what to think of the Spire equipment, but there are some good drivers here. So I prefer to go the top 5 route with Friesen at plus 450, Kligerman 5-1. I think both those are good values, but if you want to go the outrights, I will not talk you out of it. So overall, a lot of fun value for this weekend in Darlington. We'll see how things play out, but what could go wrong with tying your horse to Corey LaJoie in the Cup Series, 1,000-1 to win, but 11-1 for a top 10 at FanDuel. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's going to be all we have here for today. And for me this week on Covering the Spread, as mentioned, Tom Vecchio filling in for me tomorrow and Monday. Big thank you to Tom for doing that. You can find that on the Covering the Spread podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. And to say thank you to Tom, make sure you leave a rating, a 5-star rating over at Apple Podcasts, and thank Tom for his time filling in for me. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes. JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Enjoy the schedule release for tonight. If you hate your life enough to watch that, just kidding. It's great. Have fun. Enjoy that. We'll talk to you all next week. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.